Hello, this is Lady Boulay, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your thumbs up, for your comments, and thank you for sharing the videos. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. Well, I just want to quickly address something that I said in a previous video when I said that we don't compare ourselves to Africans, we compare ourselves to white people. I believe that I might have been misunderstood. When I said that, I did not mean that we are trying to assimilate with white people or trying to be white people or trying to consider ourselves white people, whatever that might mean. What I meant by that was we have to compare ourselves to white people if we're going to make a legitimate case for reparations or any kind of compensation. We have to make the comparison of what hundreds of years of slavery, of Jim Crow, and all of the atrocities that happened to our ancestors. We have to make the case of what that did to them versus how white people fared in a similar situation. For instance, in slavery, not only were we held in captivity against our will, not only was our wages taken from us, and I mean our ancestors, they were not paid a wage for what they were doing for hundreds of years, but they also suffered physical, emotional, and mental abuse, not to mention sexual abuse, both men and women. Our families were destroyed in slavery. Children were taken from their parents, sometimes never to see them again. That did not happen to white people in slavery. White people were able to buy land, to build wealth, and to enjoy free labor for hundreds of years. That was a benefit to them. That was not a benefit to us. So we have to be able to make that comparison. And I think that it is a comparison that's been, any black American who thinks that we can get reparations without making the comparison of what happened to black people versus what happened to white people during that same period of time, I think that you're delusional. We have to make the case. And I have to stress the point that comparing yourself to white people does not mean that you want to be white or you're trying to worship white people or you're trying to be white or whatever it is somebody might have misunderstood. What I'm saying when I said that about we don't compare ourselves to Africans, there's no benefit to us in comparing ourselves to Africans. Now, we have things in common with Africans, and if people want to identify with Africans and if you want to make that case for them, that's fine. But there is nothing to be gained with African Americans by comparing ourselves to Africans. Because even if we said Africans sold our ancestors and they owe us something, well, they don't have anything. They've been colonized themselves. They were just over at the White House a few days ago basically collecting welfare checks, and for what I call it, Joe Biden giving them $54 billion. They say there are 54 countries. All of them did not show up, but most of them did. And that was a handout, more or less. So I don't know that Africans would even have anything to help us with if they wanted to, because they need help themselves. We have to stand in the truth of our history, and we have to stand in the gap for our ancestors. They can't fight for themselves, but we have to be willing to do that. We have to have the courage to do that. That's what these people that are fighting for reparations and who are getting results are doing. They are making the case of why we deserve reparations. And that has to do with what happened to our ancestors. And you have to make the comparison. We have to make the case for ourselves for why we deserve reparations. And it's already happening in some cases. But those people are having to do some serious groundwork. They're having to do a lot of research. They're having to come up with a lot of data. And all of that is about comparing what happened to black people during the slavery system and beyond versus what happened to white people. White people got over like fat rats on us. And that comparison has to be made if we're going to make a serious case for reparations. And that was all I meant by that. I know that many of you did understand what I said, but based on the comment section, some people didn't understand what I was saying. They were saying, well, I don't compare myself to white people. We are comparing our situation with white people. We're comparing our histories with white people. We are parallel to white people when you talk about how long we've been here and how much work went into building this country. We are parallel to white people. But when it comes to benefits and who gain the most, if we consider ourselves parallel, we're still on side-by-side railroad tracks, you might say. White people are way ahead of us on that track. We might be on parallel tracks in terms of agency and in terms of skin in the game and the blood, sweat, and tears that went into this country. And actually, we put more into it than they did when you just talk about sheer, pure suffering. But yet, and still, they gain the most. They are way ahead of us on the track of equality. So if we don't make the comparison, then nobody is going to take us seriously. So I just wanted to come here and make that case that we make the comparison for compensation. I realize that there are black people who say, I don't want reparations. I don't want them to give me anything. Well, part of the brainwashing that has gone on with us is that we have been brainwashed into thinking that if we ask for reparations, then we're asking for a handout or we're asking for them to give us something. We're not asking for anybody to give us anything. When you look at these big plantation houses, when you look at these government installations, when you look at the railroads, the highways, these big Ivy League and state universities, even when you look at all of those banks on Wall Street, everything was done on the backs of black people. And then they had to turn around and do the inventions. When we talk about the electric lights, we're talking about a black person who invented the electric light bulb and then somebody else got credit for it. So we're talking about all of that. The stolen intellectual property. And the Bruce Beach. Look what happened out there in California. Bruce's Beach. You know, they don't want you to come to their clubs. They don't want you to come to their part of the beach. But then when you go and buy your own land and create your own entertainment and your own part of the beach, then they had found a reason to come and take that away from you. That has to be compensated for. And that's also a part of the comparison. That didn't happen to white people. They didn't come in and use the law of eminent domain, which means that the government can take your land if they say it's going to benefit the general public. That didn't happen to white people. They came and took black people's land first. It happened all over the South, and apparently it happened all over the country. There are so many things that happen that need compensation. And you do have to compare that. You have to say, did this happen to white people? No, it did not. That's what the comparison is. And that is what I was talking about. So I hope I've made myself clear. Okay, thank you for listening. Subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, share the video, and as always, have a great day.